I met Olivia at a friend's barbecue 6 years ago. She was the kind of woman who turned heads without trying. Sharp, confident, and stunning. I wasn't the type to get attention from women like her, but somehow, we clicked. Maybe it was my laid-back attitude, or maybe she just liked that I wasn't fawning over her like every other guy at the party. Things moved fast. Our chemistry was insane. The kind that makes you lose track of time, cancel plans, and wake up tangled together without a care in the world. I thought I had won the jackpot. She was ambitious, driven, always pushing herself further in her career, and I admired that about her. She made me feel like I was part of something bigger, like we were a team. After 2 years of dating, we got married and moved into a nice apartment in Austin. The plan was to buy a house in a year or two, start a family eventually. Our lives were busy. Olivia was climbing the corporate ladder, and I worked in technical sales, which meant occasional travel. At first, the balance worked. We made time for each other, had our date nights, stayed close. But looking back, I can see where things started to shift. It was small at first. She was working later, going out for drinks with coworkers more often. Networking, she called it. I didn't think much of it. She was ambitious, and that world required schmoozing. But something felt different. The way she talked about work changed. She became defensive whenever I asked about her long hours, like she was waiting for me to challenge her. Then came the fights. Stupid, pointless arguments over things that never used to matter. If I left dishes in the sink, if I forgot to take the trash out, if I asked too many questions about her job. It was like she was looking for reasons to be angry with me. I told myself it was stress. She was working hard, and I wasn't the type to be needy. But when the intimacy started to die, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I tried to fix it, planned a weekend getaway, bought flowers just because. But every effort was met with excuses. Too tired, too busy, not in the mood. And it wasn't just the physical distance. It was like she had built a wall between us. Then, one night, I found the bra. It was under the passenger seat of her car. Pink lace, unmistakably hers, but something about it felt off. Olivia wasn't the type to undress in the car, and if she had changed clothes for some reason, why would it end up shoved under the seat? I stood there, holding it, feeling like my brain was glitching. I wanted to believe there was some innocent explanation, but my gut told me otherwise. For the first time, the thought she's cheating pushed its way into my mind. And once it was there, it wouldn't leave. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I decided to watch. To pay attention. Because if I was right, I needed to know for sure. And if I was wrong, God, I hoped I was wrong. I couldn't stop thinking about the bra. It sat in the back of my mind like an alarm that wouldn't shut off. Every time Olivia kissed me goodnight, every time she left for work, every time she laughed at something on her phone, I wondered if I was being played for a fool. But doubt is a funny thing. It messes with your head. One minute, I was convinced she was cheating. The next, I was second-guessing myself, thinking maybe I was paranoid, reading too much into it. So I tested the waters. That Friday, I planned a surprise dinner. Steak, candles, a nice bottle of wine. I wanted to see her reaction, to gauge if she felt guilty, if she'd make another excuse to leave. When she walked through the door, I smiled and gestured to the table. I figured we could have a nice night in, I said. She blinked at the setup, hesitated for half a second, then smiled. Oh, babe, that's so sweet. But I actually have to meet some coworkers for drinks. It's kind of important. I nodded slowly. Can't you skip it? Just this once. She sighed like I was being difficult. I would, but these things matter, you know? I need to show my face. That was it. That was the moment I knew. I forced a smile. Of course. Go ahead. She kissed my cheek, told me she'd be back later, and headed to the bedroom to freshen up. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the meal I had made, my stomach churning. Then, without thinking, I grabbed my work phone, turned on the GPS tracking app one used for travel, and slipped the device into her purse. By the time she left, I had no appetite. I tossed the food in the trash, poured myself a drink, and waited. 20 minutes later, I checked the tracker. She was at the bar she always mentioned. Nothing suspicious. But an hour after that, the dots started moving. Not toward home. Not toward another bar. A hotel. My hands tightened around my phone. I stared at the screen, pulse hammering in my ears. I should have felt rage, betrayal, something explosive, but all I felt was cold. Like my body was shutting down to protect itself from what I already knew. I grabbed my keys and left. I parked across the street from the hotel and killed the engine. The parking lot was half full, the glowing sign above the entrance casting a dim light over the pavement. I sat there, gripping the wheel so hard my fingers ached. My chest felt hollow, like my body had already processed what I was about to see before my brain could catch up. I didn't want to go inside. I didn't want to be that guy, storming into a hotel lobby, demanding answers from a wife who had already given up on me without saying a word. But I couldn't just sit there either. So I waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then, finally, the entrance doors slid open. Olivia walked out, smiling, her hair perfect, her makeup untouched, like she hadn't just spent the last hour or two betraying me. And next to her, with his hand on her lower back, was a man in a suit. Older than me, confident, like he owned the world. She laughed at something he said. Then, right there in the parking lot, he leaned in and kissed her. And she kissed him back. I had imagined this moment 1,000 different ways. Thought I'd see red, that I'd lose my mind, that I'd go over there and break his nose. But instead, I just sat there, completely numb. It was real. She pulled away first, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, then got into his car like it was the most natural thing in the world. They drove off together, and I didn't follow. Instead, I put my car in drive and left. I don't even remember where I was going. I just drove, hands clenched on the wheel, replaying the moment over and over in my head. Like if I watched it enough times, I'd finally feel something. I ended up at some dive bar outside of town, the kind of place with cheap drinks and a jukebox that hadn't been updated in decades. I slid onto a bar stool and ordered a whiskey. The bartender, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes, gave me a once-over. Rough night? I let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Something like that. A guy a few seats down turned toward me. Older, built like he did real work for a living. Let me guess, he said. Wife. I stared at my drink. Yeah. Cheating? I swallowed the whiskey in one go and set the glass down. Yeah. He nodded, like he'd seen it 100 times. You catch her? Saw enough. He let out a low whistle, then gestured for the bartender to pour me another. Been there, man. I didn't know why, but I told him everything. How I found the bra, how I tracked her, how I sat in my car watching my wife kiss another man like I didn't exist. He listened, didn't interrupt, just let me get it all out. When I was done, he took a sip of his beer and said, So what's the plan? I stared at him. The plan? He shrugged. You gonna confront her? Kick her out? Try to fix it? I scoffed. Hell no. He smirked. Good. Ain't worth it. We sat in silence for a moment before he added, You got somewhere to go? I hesitated. Not really. He nodded toward the door. I got a trailer up in the hills. Not much, but it's quiet. If you need a place to clear your head, it's yours. I didn't answer right away. The idea of just disappearing, of leaving Olivia behind without a word, felt right. I looked down at my drink. Yeah, I said finally. I think I need that. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I crashed in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, lying on a stiff mattress, staring at the ceiling. My mind wouldn't shut off. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. The way she smiled at him. The way she let him touch her. The way she kissed him without hesitation. Like I had never existed. Sometime around dawn, exhaustion finally dragged me under. When I woke up, my phone was buzzing nonstop. I grabbed it off the nightstand and squinted at the screen. 37 missed calls. A flood of messages, too. The first few were normal. Hey, babe. Hope you're having a good night. Sent before she realized I wasn't home. Then came the concern. Where are you? Are you okay? Then the panic. Why aren't you answering? I'm really worried. And finally, the anger. Are you ignoring me? What the hell is going on? You're acting crazy. Call me back. Paul, this isn't funny. Answer me. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone, feeling nothing. She had no idea that I knew. No idea that I had stood there, watching her throw our marriage away. I thought about calling her back, just to hear what kind of lies she'd come up with. But what was the point? She would deny it. Maybe even try to turn it on me. Why are you tracking me? Why don't you trust me? I could already hear the gaslighting. I turned my phone off, threw it onto the bed, and walked into the bathroom. Stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot, my jaw tight. I looked like a man on the edge of something, but I didn't know what. An hour later, I was back on the road, heading toward the hills. Ray's place was about an hour out, tucked away from everything. When I pulled up, he was outside, leaning against his truck like he'd been expecting me. Figured you'd show, he said, taking a drag from his cigarette. I stepped out of the car. Yeah. He nodded toward the trailer. Go take a look. It was small, but clean. A little worn, but solid. The kind of place that didn't ask for much, just a bed, a roof, and space to breathe. It felt right. I turned back to Ray. How much you want for it? He waved a hand. We'll figure that out later. For now, just settle in. So I did. For the next few days, I went back into town when Olivia was at work, grabbing my things in small trips. A duffel bag here, a box there. I didn't take anything big, just clothes, my laptop, the things that mattered. I wanted to be gone before she even realized I was leaving. At night, I sat outside with a beer, listening to the wind move through the trees, trying to make sense of everything. The anger was still there, burning just under the surface. But more than that, I felt empty, like she had taken something from me I'd never get back. The texts kept coming, then the voicemails. Then she had her mom call me. I ignored them all. Then, finally, a week later, she cracked. Paul, I don't know what's happening, but please talk to me. I'm scared. I stared at the message for a long time. Then, without replying, I turned my phone off and walked outside, breathing in the cold, clean air. She was scared? Good. The night before Olivia came back from her trip, I stood in our apartment for the last time. It felt different now. Empty, unfamiliar, like it had never really been mine to begin with. I had packed up everything that mattered, left behind everything that didn't. The framed wedding photos on the wall. The coffee mugs we bought together. The bed we used to share. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed a piece of paper, and wrote 5 simple words. Hope it was worth it. I set the note on the counter, placed my wedding ring on top, and walked out the door without looking back. By the time Olivia landed the next morning, I was long gone. I turned my phone on around noon, just to see what would happen. It didn't take long. Within minutes, it started vibrating nonstop. Calls. Texts. Where are you? Why isn't your stuff here? Paul, I don't understand. Call me. I didn't answer. Just watched as the messages kept coming, her confusion slowly turning to desperation. Then, a few hours later, anger. You're acting insane. What the hell is going on? Are you really doing this? Just running away like a coward? Paul, you need to stop acting like a child and talk to me. I smiled at that one. She was panicking, trying to regain control, but she had already lost. I shut off my phone again and sat on the porch of my new home. The trailer, the hills, the silence. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and it was far away from her. Over the next few weeks, Olivia's messages shifted. At first, she tried to reason with me. If something is wrong, we can fix it. We need to talk. I don't know what you think you know, but this is insane. I love you. Please don't do this. When I didn't respond, the messages turned bitter. You're pathetic. A real man wouldn't just leave. You have no idea what's actually going on. At least be decent enough to explain yourself, asshole. I almost laughed. Even now, she couldn't admit what she'd done. Then, after weeks of silence, she finally broke. I'm sorry. I messed up. I didn't mean for this to happen. I stared at my phone for a long time, reading the words over and over. And for the first time since that night outside the hotel, I felt something close to peace. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She had already said everything I needed to know. Months passed. I moved on. The messages stopped. The calls stopped. Olivia finally accepted that I was gone. Then I saw her. I was leaving a coffee shop in town when I heard my name. Paul. I turned, and there she was, standing across the street, looking thinner, more put together than she had any right to be. Like she had been preparing for this moment. She hurried over, eyes scanning my face like she was searching for something. Anger, regret, maybe even hope. I gave her nothing. "I've been looking for you," she said, breathless. I exhaled, already tired. "Why?" Because I needed to see you. To explain." "There's nothing to explain." She reached for my arm, then hesitated. "I'm sorry, Paul. I really am. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." I laughed, shaking my head. "Yeah, you did." Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't falling for it. Not anymore. "I lost everything after you left," she whispered. "I quit my job. He got transferred. His fiancée left him. I haven't been with anyone since you." I just watched her. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued, voice trembling. "But I miss you. I miss us. I wish we could try again." I took a slow breath. "We can't." Her eyes searched mine. "If you had cheated, I would have fought for us." I tilted my head. "No, you wouldn't. You would have left without a second thought." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Because we both knew it was true. She wiped at her face, forcing a sad smile. "I still love you, Paul." I stepped back. "No, you don't. You loved the comfort, the safety, and when you got bored, you threw it away." She reached for my hand. "Please." I pulled away. "Take care of yourself, Olivia." Then I walked past her, down the street, toward my truck. She didn't follow, and I never looked back.